Hello, and welcome to this Museum at Home webinar about our new exhibition, Ink in the Lines. I'm Amanda Dennett, Head of Digital Experience at the Australian War Memorial. Many members of the Australian Defence Forces have tattoos, and while their reasons for getting tattooed are as varied as the people themselves, self-expression and belonging play a part. In this webinar, we'll take a closer look at some of the tattoo stories we uncovered in developing the Ink in the Lines exhibition. Our presenters today are Stephanie Boyle, Senior Curator and Lead Curator for this exhibition. She specialises in oral histories for the National Collection. Bob McKendry, Manager of Digital Preservation and Photographer for the Ink in the Lines exhibition. Today, this is an interactive webinar. Please send us your questions by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window, and we'll answer as many of your questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Once again, welcome, and I'll now hand over to our presenters.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us here at the War Memorial. As Amanda said, I'm Stephanie. This is my colleague, Bob. We don't have with us our other teammate, Stephen. We'll come to him. Ink in the Lines is an exhibition not only about tattoos, but probably more importantly, about stories and about the Australian veterans past and present who wear their stories on their skin in the form of tattoos. This is a pioneering exhibition for us, so we're quite excited about it, not only for the War Memorial because we haven't covered tattoos before, but also because as far as we know, this hasn't been done in Australia before. Other institutions overseas have looked at military tattoos, and other institutions in Australia have done tattoo exhibitions, but putting the two together of military tattoos in one place is new and exciting. Quite a few people have asked us how it all came about. How did you end up doing this unusual exhibition at the War Memorial? So the story is, we realised we had a lot of photographs in the archival collection, the War Memorial's collection, of soldiers and sailors and airmen from World War I onwards wearing tattoos. And it had sort of been largely unremarked. We sort of knew they were there, but they were never picked out. And we're finding more all the time now that we're looking for them. And I started doing talks about tattoos to our lunchtime audiences. And we realised there was a real interest there. And of course, we found it interesting. There's this kind of unofficial history going on, secret military history happening within the official history. And there's a story there. But then we realised we had all these archival images and no actual stories to go with them. Sometimes we didn't even know the names of the people in these photographs. And even if we do know their names, we don't have the experiences. They haven't done an oral history with us. Maybe they haven't donated a diary. They haven't told us about themselves. They haven't had a chance. So that's how the project came about. We decided that in order to be able to tell the story of tattoos in the military, we had to go out and find still living veterans who were still around, willing to share with us the pictures on their skin and the stories in their hearts and minds. We would do what we'd never done before, which is build a discrete body of work of images and oral histories that would tell those stories. So how did we do this? We did a call out, basically. We got the public on board. We invited people with military-themed tattoos to contact us, share with us a picture and a little bit about themselves. And from that group of people, we identified people who were willing to go one step further with us and actually allow us into their homes in some cases to photograph them, sometimes taking off clothing to do so, bearing skin as well as their hearts, their souls. It's been a really, we did that last year. We went around Australia, Bob and Stephen and I, to interview them. So I did the interviews, Stephen would film them, and Bob would photograph the people we were speaking to. And sometimes there were family members present who sometimes may have been listening to the veteran recount their stories for the first time, or with a degree of clarity that they hadn't heard before, and that was very emotional for us. Yeah. Sometimes I might be, Stephen and I are recording an interview with someone on the deck, and the veteran's wife will be in the kitchen with Bob, and just tears running down their faces. So it was very powerfully emotive experience for us, building this collection. We weren't even sure that we would have an exhibition at the end of it, but now looking back, it seems natural that we would have had an exhibition. Why wouldn't you? But at the time, we weren't sure. In meeting these veterans, we found many common threads. Service people get tattoos for very personal reasons, yet the tattoos are often on public display, inviting public recognition, inviting people to see the tattoo and ask that veteran about their tattoo. People get tattoos for love, to commemorate a lost friend, to celebrate a transformative experience in their lives, which might be a deployment, it might be PTSD that they've recovered from or are continuing to recover from. It's only after their service, a lot of these people got tattoos during service, but people also had tattoos they'd only gotten after their deployments, after they've had time to process those memories and acknowledge the experiences, the profoundly transformative experiences that they've had. So to talk more about the exhibition itself and to try and cover these really quite large and also universal themes. This is not as I was saying before, this is a personal history, not an official history. So this exhibition doesn't talk about dates and operations and wars and battlefields. It talks about identity and belonging. It talks about love and family, and it talks about loss, and it talks about healing. David Nicholson, with his beautifully tattooed, he's a veteran of Afghanistan, and many of his tattoos are symbols of his identity as a veteran of the Navy as well as the Army. Actually, it's got a Popeye tattoo in there, as well as a really lovely, almost stylised postcard of Mirabad Valley, where he was deployed, and in fact was blown up by IEDs several times. He's okay, but he's out of the Army now. So that was our first theme, identity and belonging. Our second theme was mates and families, and the reason we've got mates and families together is because it's pretty hard, once you get talking to these folks, to separate them out. Often people will have, say, one arm of tattoo designs dedicated to the military family and the other arm is dedicated to their family, the family at home, the partner, the children, parents, even pets are represented. And a lot of people we spoke to, the importance of both kinds of families in their lives were paramount and almost inseparable. People talked about the closeness of their mates, the importance of camaraderie in the service, and also so some people it was their family who pulled them back from the brink if they had gone through a traumatic experience and were beginning that path to recovery. And a number of people have said something like, if it wasn't for my wife, I'd be dead. And they really meant it. It wasn't just a glib thing that they, a throwaway comment. The next theme was we refer to as loss, grief, and commemoration. And this is to speak to the fact that a lot of people have memorial or tribute tattoos to commemorate the life of a friend or people they've deployed with who've been lost as a result of their service. So we've got an example there of Paul Warren's back piece, which is a large samurai, sort of a demonic samurai spirit, which is a reference to the fact that after Paul came back from Afghanistan, minus half a leg and minus a friend, his friend Ben Renato was killed in the same IED blast that injured Paul. And Paul spoke to us about the loss of friends and also a very long and arduous journey to recover from grief and also to rehabilitate after a traumatic and profound physical injury. He spoke to us about how getting a tattoo, the tattoo of the samurai warrior, helped him therapeutically. The pain of the tattoo, he said, helped him realise he was alive, but also the simple act of getting out of the house, because when you're really depressed, you find it hard to leave your own home. But if you're getting a tattoo, you have to leave your home. You have to go and see the tattooist. You have to talk to the tattooist about the design. You have to really have a potentially quite complicated conversation with someone about it. So that was just one of the ways in which people told us how tattoos have really helped them. And the final theme in our exhibition we called Healing, and that references the fact that a lot of people had a tattoo to acknowledge or demonstrate the fact that they'd been through a transformative and or traumatic experience in their lives, and the tattoo is a way of showing people that they've come through it, and they may have been had a lot of sadness as a result of their military service, but they don't regret their military service. They acknowledge the fact that their service is part of who they are, and they don't deny it. They're moving on with their lives. They're moving forward. And that's something we saw time and time again. That you know, even people who'd been through something really awful, they didn't regret their military service. They're very proud of their military service, and that was a continually underlying thread of all these conversations. Something else that we found while we were doing this work last year, and well before the exhibition was even underway in development, I've got a picture there of a Facebook post that was shared by Australian Veterans Network, and they're sharing a photograph that was taken in a tattoo studio where we were doing interviews one day up in Townsville. And when I came across that, I was really overwhelmed. The fact that our work was being seen publicly was one thing, but to have it picked up and acknowledged by the Veteran Suicide Network was enormous. And that this was the community that we ourselves hoped to engage with, showing us that we were doing the right thing, that we were leaning in, that they could see how important tattoos were for themselves as representative of their experiences, and they were reflecting back to us what we were doing was really worthwhile. I guess on a lighter note as well, now that the exhibition is up, we've had some of the people we worked with come through and have a look themselves on the wall. We've got a couple of pictures there of one of Sean, who's a veteran of Somalia, and Newton, who's an Army reservist in Sydney. They came through, we saw them. They loved the exhibition. They brought friends and family with them. It was an honour to see them in the space and see themselves on the wall and recognised. It was a joy, really. Maybe that's not a very professional curatorial thing to say, but it was
really closed out the process.
Yes, it was very affirming for us, and I think for the War Memorial as well. There were a couple of things that I want to kind of mention that we took away out of this. Every exhibition is a learning experience. But something I want to particularly draw attention to is that in this exhibition people are only identified by their first name, and we haven't provided information about their rank, or sometimes we've said how long someone's been in the Army or the Navy, but we haven't gave particular attention to their deployment experience or what medals they have. That's a very deliberate move on our part, where it's a way of emphasising the fact that this is about stories. It's not about official history. It's, this is not an exhibition for learning about different battles in Afghanistan. It's a way to learn how people experience those battles and how they've fought their own battles after their service, whether it's with rehabilitation or overcoming depression. That's really what this exhibition is about. Something else we noticed was that people really come forward when not everybody, but a lot of people who participated in this exhibition came forward because they were ready to talk, because they'd had that chance and that time to reflect on their experiences. They've had tattoos which reflect that willingness to acknowledge and process their experiences. And a third thing I really want to acknowledge is that I feel like we achieved what we set out to do, because visitors have come away from this exhibition. People who didn't like tattoos going in have come out with a different idea about tattoos. It's really changed their perspective, and that to me is a win, because we really wanted visitors to engage with the individuals in this exhibition, to get to know some Australian veterans, to see them as people first, not just veterans. You don't have to like military history and you don't have to like tattoos to get something out of this exhibition, and that seems to be the feedback we're getting. So it's been an absolute honour and pleasure and privilege to work on this exhibition. Another thing is that Bob and Stephen are like me, long-time War Memorial staff members, and it was a big deal for us to run our own exhibition, to have our own staff photographer do the work, and he's done really beautiful work. Yeah, thank you, Bob. And I think, I don't know if we've got it up there now, but there's a picture there of somebody sent us in through our Facebook feed a few years ago, a picture of the War Memorial's logo tattooed on their leg. I don't know who sent it in. We don't know. It was just about. It'd be just great if they came forward again and identified themselves. But we don't expect that sort of. That's probably ultimate feedback for the War Memorial. That was quite fun. But yeah, a big thank you to. Most of all to the people who participated in this exhibition. Obviously we couldn't have done it without you, and they've done a really great thing in so generously sharing their stories and time with us. That was a gift, and by doing that, and this was something they themselves said quite often, was I'm doing this interview, I'm doing these photos because I want talking about things helps me, and when I show other veterans that it's okay to talk about your experiences, that helps them as well. So it's been a real circle of giving, I think.
Yeah, that was a common theme.
Yeah.
To talk about it and to inspire other veterans to talk about it. Mm.
Yes, yeah, so many people said that. Yeah, there were a lot of recurring themes with this. Bob's going to talk now about his involvement with the project, how it all looked through the photographer's lens, I guess.
Thank you, Steph. That was beautiful. Yeah, looking through the lens, I'm not used to being on this side of the lens, Steph, so that was a sterling performance. I hope mine measures up. First, let me talk about the photographic process. So this is about the approach that I took to the commission and the techniques we used to really get that end result of a real personal approach to the images and the oral histories that form the exhibition. So as Steph mentioned, this commission was very different or unique for us in the sense that we had a staff member doing the photography and it wasn't externally contracted out. And I think this is important for the commission because it took an understanding of the collection and then interpreted it in a way and made the commission. I've worked here for 15 years as a member of the photographic film and sound team, and in that time I've been very hands-on with the collection, so I've got a rather intimate, practical understanding of the images in the collection. There's some collections there that resonate more for this process and that really came to the front in the decision-making process about the commission. They're both in First World War. The first one is the Dage collection. It consists of 19,000 glass plates. And Algernon Dage shot these First World War soldiers as they embarked from Melbourne. They're very personal moments of individuals with their family, sometimes by themselves, and you can really see the emotions. There was a common theme through both of these collections that inspired me, also the Thulier collection. This is a similar portrait collection, shot around the First World War, but it was shot in France and the soldiers had already seen active service, and you could really see they were battle-hardened. But again, you could really see the emotions. I've got a print here that we did for an exhibition on it, and you can really see, I hope this works, you can really see that these guys are different to the ones that headed off. There's a bit of tomfoolery around there, I don't think you can take that out, but they definitely look like they've seen some stuff. And
1,000-yard stairs.
Yeah, and you really get it in the imagery. With that in mind and that in my back pocket, it was really important to make these images personal, not just to be straight documentation of tattoos, but for you to understand that these are people just like us. They live and breathe like us, but they've got service stories that are well worth hearing.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I came up with a bit of an image suite I couldn't do it with one image. I was no Dage or Fourier. I had to bring a few images together. So the image suite would consist of images of the interview happening. So we understood we were most of the time in people's houses in very private environments, and you can see them opening up and talking about very intimate moments in their life. So the first one was just to really capture the interview and to see what was unfolding there in the interview. The next shot was to show emotion, and that was through a close-up. So to get close enough into the face that you could see the eyes, you could understand the person, and this close-up was taken straight after the interview. So very emotional interviews. To move them straight off and then photograph that headshot, I think, was a really important part of the process, because we were able to get certain levels of vulnerability and emotion shown that I don't think we would have got otherwise.
And I think something else that I noticed as an interviewer as well, and I have photographed or tried to photograph interviewees before when I've been off-site. Don't always have a talented photographer with me, but especially if it has been an emotional interview, then to be able to go directly to another activity, which is still in the space, still focused on them, but it's taken. We're not in the emotional space anymore. We're concentrating on something new.
Straight into it.
Yeah, and depending on where their tattoo is, they might have to change their clothes, or they certainly might have to fold up a sleeve or take off a shirt. And so we're still with them, and they're still processing what's just happened, but they're doing it in a less intense way.
Yeah.
And I thought I found that was a really useful thing.
It seemed to work well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Apart from me grabbing them straight from an oral history and shoving a camera right in their face. So
in the grill.
We got the close-up shot, and then the background would be set up, and we documented the tattoos. So depending on the scope, the size of the tattoos, the amount of them, some of them were full body shots, some of them were details, but we'd document all the tattoos, and then we'd move on to an external shot. The last shot, I think, was a bit of a fuse breaker too. So it was a situational portrait where it was a wide shot showing the subject in their environment, again to show that personal side and help people understand this is a real person and the story behind the tattoos.
I think you also had a bit of an idea about each time, everywhere we went, and we were all around the place, but you would find a setting which suggested a road or a path. Like you looked for a similar perspective each time. Was that?
It was more the front, that we needed a wide shot and to show their house, to show the environment they were in.
But there was a continuity there.
There was that was more a focal point, leading people in, so they were looking right at that subject and understanding. And there was a consistency between them all too that I think is worth mentioning. I wanted people to look past the photographic technique, and I think in repeating similar shots, people take away all that photographic jargon and they just look at the people. And I think that came through in the exhibition too. I would hope it did. So with the group of images, we set off on our merry way. We did Dave. He was our first interviewer, and he was perfect, wasn't he? It was the best one we could have hoped for, I think, to be the first off the bat.
Yes, David, who lives here in Canberra, and who I mentioned before, veteran of Afghanistan, and blown up by IDs. He was in the cavalry, and he had tattoos that referenced that, as well as Afghanistan, and also he had a tattoo of Flojo, an explosive detection dog, who he was very fond of, and like dogs are great morale raisers over in the battle zones. And he had 5 dogs.
And at home, he had 5 very large dogs. That was a consistent theme, wasn't it? The support animals. Nearly every home we went into, there was...
Whether it's a rabbit or a budgie or
rat. Or a
rat.
Rabbit,
Cats sort of usurping the interview from time to time. Dogs bumping microphones, that was a big one. It was a lot of fun. A lot of animals.
So Dave was sort of our test, and we took the image package onto Dave, and I'll walk you through the process, I guess. Might make sense. We turn up, we knock on the door. we'd be invited into people's home, and as Steph's already talked about, it was a very personal experience. We'd walk in, Steph would sit down with the subject and give them a little bit of a brief or a heads up on what to expect.
First of all, there was a bit of fussing around about where to put the camera and where the light was, and
yeah, we tried not to make too much of us.
No, we're not a TV crew, and in fact, I think that was an important point to make before, during, and after. You know, we're not Channel 7. You know, you're not going to be on the 6 o'clock news tonight, and just to relax. And that first one at Dave's, I remember. So it was the first time we were doing it. So I was nervous. I don't know how you guys were feeling.
I'm behind the camera.
David was definitely nervous, but he was really lovely and welcoming. And also, it was raining like a very heavy thing. It was raining a lot. Do you remember?
Yeah, cleared up for the photograph.
Bad for the cameraman because the sound of the rain on the tin roof. Anyway.
Yeah, so the process, we head in, Steph will talk to the subject, we set up for the oral history recording, and the oral history recording goes and gets underway. While that's happening, I'd go and set up a backdrop. I'd find a place in the house where I had a light coming in, and I'd set up a bounce flash and a black background, and then I'd walk around the suburb or walk around the backyard and look for a place for the situational portrait. After this was done, while the interview's going on, I'd come back and then I'd document the interview and wait for it to finish, and the process from there has already been discussed. We grab the subject, put them in front of a backdrop, document the tattoos, and finish off with that situational portrait.
Sometimes we had a cup of tea.
Yeah, look, it was some very emotional stuff, and you did feel a bit guilty packing up all your equipment, throwing it in the car and going home. So there were lots of cups of tea.
Hugs.
We would hang around a little bit longer depending on the subjects that were brought up.
Yes, and sometimes we had to dash away to see someone else on the other side of town. Yeah. I was just thinking too, with sometimes with your scouting around outside while we were working inside, there was that time, I think it was Sean, and one of the neighbours saw you and took you for a burglar. Yep,
no, they were very conscientious neighbours. Oi mate, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was a real change from being in the office, wasn't it?
It was great.
A big change.
It was great. So that was the process of capture. We would then come back to the War Memorial, and there'd be image selection for the commission. The commission ended up having 1,100 images in it. That consisted of about 20 to 30 images for each subject after we'd done the cull, and 37 oral history recordings.
Yes, and selecting which images to use, I don't...
It was fun. So yeah, we distilled that for the exhibition down to 76 frame prints.
Yes, different sizes.
And our 4 AVs based on the themes, but that was 20 stories.
21.
21 stories.
Yes, so we've got, in addition to the 70 plus images throughout the exhibition, we've got 4 AVs, audiovisual, one for each theme, and each of those features extracts from the interviews with the people and photographs as well. We felt a real commitment to try and represent as many people in the exhibition as we could. You want to put everything in there, but we would have needed a gallery, or I don't know, the whole War Memorial probably to put everything in there, which is a real shame.
You've done well with the online exhibition, but we've got lots of stories
yes.
up there.
I think I will tell people to get online and look at the exhibition. Yes.
Good.
Do a bit of an edit there.
To follow the end-to-end process through, as well as being able to capture it in-house, we were able to do the printing too, which really gave us full control over what hung on those walls.
Yeah.
And I think that was an important point to make, that being able to do that printing in-house really helped us control that end product just a little bit tighter.
Bit of a luxury, really, to have your own in-house printing service. But good stuff. Yes.
That's pretty much it from me. I just want to give a heartfelt thanks, similar to you did, to all the participants. Without you, we didn't have anything. You opened your door, let us into your house. It was a really humbling experience to hear you speak so honestly and openly, and a big thank you for that.
Thank you. And I guess another thing too is it's been a bit weird for us in this pandemic year that ordinarily we'd have had a bells and whistles launch, and lots of people through. We had to do the launch digitally, virtual launch, a bit like this conversation, and not as many people have been able to come through as we would have liked. Hopefully, with the borders easing, and I hope that they continue to ease, and we'll, you know, have more visitors come through, and also more of the participants themselves come through. I can say that the exhibition was advertised as being open until the end of January next year, but it now looks to be open for longer than that. Probably March, maybe even April. Anyway, stay tuned on that one. But the good news is that here in Canberra, there will be more time to see the exhibition live, real, and it will travel as well. That's another good thing about this exhibition, that the Warm World does want it to travel, and nothing's locked in, but it will, you know, go to Victoria and to Queensland, and hopefully further west as well. Too soon to say, so please stay tuned for that. And yeah, we do have an online gallery, so there's a lot of images and stories there, a very rich collection of content to enjoy. And we're still encouraging people to upload photographs of themselves if they have a military themed tattoo. So we were focusing for this project on veterans, but we don't mind now if you're a veteran or whether you just have a beautiful tattoo that commemorates a grandparent or something of that kind that that you want to share with us. It's very easy to do. Take a photograph, hashtag Ink in the Lines or AWM, and upload it to your socials, and we'll find it. We've got another component of the exhibition is a big sort of screen, and we're uploading images that people share of their tattoos to that. So if you come into the exhibition, you might see yourself. And we've also got a wall where people can photograph their tattoo, as long as it's in a G-rated location. You can take a photograph of your tattoo.
It will be moderated.
It will be moderated, yes, so safe for everybody.
General consumption.
General consumption. Something else that I just learned recently, Stephen took notice of this for us, is that Remembrance Day is very soon. And we've got a every last post ceremony tells the story of someone who died as a result of their service, and the Remembrance Day last post ceremony will tell the story of Kevin Wheatley, VC, and I mention him particularly because he happened to be a very heavily tattooed soldier, so it's a Victoria Cross winner with a lot of tattoos. There's photographs of him in the collection as well. I think I don't know, like we could talk more or less, or I'm not sure how we're going for time. Yeah, but it's been great to have an opportunity to talk about this, and yeah, hopefully in future we get to talk to people in person, not just virtually. Would be really lovely.
To Stephanie and Bob for that really insightful look at how the Ink in the Lines exhibition came together, from travelling around Australia to take photos and hear stories from people, into a special exhibition at Memorial, and one that will travel, which is really exciting news for people who aren't in Canberra and but are keen to get up close to this exhibition. We have had a few questions come in, which is great, so I will ask our presenters now. I wanted to pick up first, perhaps with Bob. This might be one for you. You spoke about the image selection process, the thousands that you took, and then whittling that down to perhaps 20 to 30 per person that reflect the stories that they have told you. But visiting the exhibition personally and seeing that perhaps we might just have one or a couple of images to tell a whole person's entire story. How do you make the choice of perhaps an image that that reflects that story? And if you can tell us a bit about, it must be difficult, but how do you choose that representative image?
It was a two-staged process. So Stephanie's laughing because she saw the second stage, and it was very difficult. You become emotionally attached to these images,
yeah.
And then you have to argue over the artistic merit versus the contextual merit.
There was an arm wrestle a few times.
Yes, so it wasn't too hard to make that initial selection down to the 20 to 30. There was a logical group of things that I'd be looking for within the images, and they stood out. I would cross over to the team, so in the multimedia team, there were a lot of people that would cast eyes over and give me a sanity check on some of the images we were looking at, but I did find it quite logical to end up at the 20 to 30 selection. The really tricky bit were the discussions around what needs to go on the wall, and I do understand this came from a thematic, from a storytelling point of view, and the images needed to back that up. And all the other images are in the National Collection. They're there, they can be disseminated. So the blood on the floor, so to speak, wasn't that bad in that selection process.
That's a really good point, that all the images, all the ones without the lens cap on anyway, have gone into the National Collection. And
maybe one or two made it through.
And they are, they're not online at the moment, but eventually, because there are about 1,000 of them, so we will make them available through our online catalogue. You can find them that way. Selection process. I guess it's a bit like an author editing a book or a filmmaker making a film. There are lots of beautiful images and important stories, and you just can't fit them all in, and you end up having to you end up having to edit down, I suppose. And I don't think it was a matter of the quality of the images, but sometimes you might want to tell a particular story, but the image isn't quite right. Maybe the tattoo was in an awkward place, and so we decided not to use that one. We've only got so much space on the wall, so you end up using a different alternative image.
The only issues came up when I would look at an image that I thought technically wasn't the best, but from a story point of view, it was a must-have.
Yeah.
So I did have to let go of a few things there and go, well, it may not be technically the best image in the world, but it fits in with that sequence of events and it tells a story.
Thank you. Thank you, Princess.
Anytime. Yeah. I haven't answered that one in depth enough.
So the next question relates to a topic that you touched on, Stephanie, in your presentation, which was about the, as part of the exhibition, our decision to not include the last name and rank and other details about the individuals and the participants in the exhibition. And so we've got a question from Catherine that wants to delve into that a bit more. So she asks, did the participants sort of request that their identity not be revealed, or was it a conscious decision by the memorial to give a deeper perspective? So can you talk to us a little bit more about that and how it is different to our usual exhibition process?
Yep. No, no one asked to be anonymised. It was a natural decision. It kind of evolved that way, and no one really questioned it. With every exhibition or project at an institution like this, at every stage of a project or exercise, things are checked and questioned and balanced. I expected to be challenged internally about that one, but it wasn't, and I'm really glad about that, because it just felt like the natural and right thing to do.
A lot of the stories were that personal, but they were about life after service.
Yes.
And their name seemed more important than their rank and serial number, based in the context of that oral history. Yeah.
So it was very much about the reason. It sort of evolved because it seemed like the more natural thing to do. It seemed like, just as Bob said, the individual and the individual's personal experience take precedence over what they may or may not have done. And something we see a lot here, and certainly I see it in the oral histories that I conduct, not only with the people who are in this project, but in general as part of my work, is that there's a lot of I think there's a bit of confusion in the wider community, and there's some angst and stress in the military community about the fact that people aren't their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers. People aren't going to do battle with Nazis and Huns, and where the kind of warfare that we're seeing now is more likely it's not by volunteer or conscript soldiers and sailors and airmen. It's by people who've chosen the military as their professional career, and then they may leave it. They're not going in and fighting epic battles. I think there are a lot of I've seen it a lot that people are kind of oppressed in some ways by the history of great wars, and there's this concern and anxiety about not living up to what our forefathers have done in the Anzacs. I think an important part of this exhibition is to try and defuse that perception that our military have to perform great deeds or be Victoria Cross winners. There are so many different ways to participate in a war or a theatre of war or a conflict, and a lot of people we spoke to had deployment experiences and operational deployment experiences, and some of them didn't. A lot of people, for every person in the front line in Afghanistan, sort of on patrol, engaging with the enemy, there are going to be at least 50 people behind the lines providing. They're in country, they're in Afghanistan, but they're not in the front line. And I think that's an important part. Role for the War Memorial is to help make that dynamic clearer to people. So it's very long-winded. I feel like I've gotten away from the question, but I do think that question is like the tip of an iceberg, and there's all this comes underneath. So that's another reason why we didn't put emphasis on ranks or deployments. There's just such a variety of experiences there, but the unifying experience was that of being an ADF veteran. I hope that helps, Catherine.
So the next question we have is from Lee, and it's about getting tattoos. And Lee asks, did you find that service people had their tattoos done while they were in country and serving? Or once they returned home and had time to reflect about what they wanted to have represented? And as a bit of a side question of my own to go alongside that, did what you find in interviewing participants for this exhibition differ at all to perhaps what you found historically with people's time of getting tattoos? Has that changed over time, or is it the same?
Yeah, really interesting questions. There was at least one person we met who was tattooed in country, and that was Kyle. He's featured in our loss and commemoration theme. He's not in the army now, but he was in a military action for which he was awarded a Medal of Gallantry in 2013 in Afghanistan. Anyway, he has several tattoos, but the tattoo we particularly featured was one that was applied to him while he was in Afghanistan by an American soldier he was teamed up with, and a number of guys in his section were tattooed by this American soldier. I think what had happened was the man's name was Chris, and he'd been sent a tattoo machine by a friend at home because although obviously we're in a war zone and anything can happen any time, but there's a lot of downtime as well, and a bit of a saying in the army is hurry up and wait. So tattoo machine to help pass the time, why not? And so yeah, Kyle has a tattoo on his upper thigh. It's the word infidel because that's what the Taliban used to refer to them as over their radio chatter, their comms. It's a bit of a badge of honour, they felt, and he's had it re-inked a few times, at least once, so the colour is still very strong. You can see that in the photograph. But more likely, people sometimes get a tattoo when they're young and they're off with their mates at King's Cross. We've certainly encountered a few of those, and a lot of the tattoos that we saw were applied after a deployment back at home, or even after leaving the service. And I think that was a big part of that idea of, I think it was something I did mention earlier about getting a tattoo after you, maybe even years after you've left the Navy or the Army. It's because you want to, you've had time to think about your experiences, you've realised how important they are, and you want to acknowledge them in this way that is quite public, and people will see the tattoo and ask you about it. And a lot of the women we spoke to, actually, Deb and Tanya and some other people, like, you know, when people see their tattoos and ask them about it, people are really surprised. They're women, and they were in the Navy, they're in the Army, they kind of enjoy overturning people's preconceptions. I think that was a very strong, that was quite a strong element for some of the ladies we interviewed. And there was another part to that question, wasn't there? Whether the types of tattoos have changed. I think they have. So in the early days of tattooing, at least in Australia, you see a lot of, see or hear of a lot of tattoos that are really basically a patriotic theme. I mean, people are still getting patriotic tattoos, but there were, patriots, names and pictures of girlfriends or, you know, sweethearts, they would have said in World War I. And then later on, in, say, in Vietnam, you see a lot of tattoos very similar. They've got a kind of, you know, because they've gone into a tattoo shop and got a flashcard off the wall. But now you can do just about anything with a tattoo. Yeah. The technology is
the ink technology, the colours, the detail. We really saw a shift in the last maybe 10 years.
And I think that because the technology has become so much more nuanced and sophisticated, people can really get in there and create and tailor a design either themselves or with the help of the tattooist that really, really specifically tells the story that they want to tell. Yeah.
Like Tony's tattoo, that was another one done in the field, so that's the Diag.
Yes, perfect, yes.
And that is very old, very barbaric, but it was done in the mountains in Borneo by Diag tribesmen. It's the most authentic tattoo I think we saw.
Yes.
His cockroaches kissing on his arm.
Yeah, Tony was our old, we only had one Vietnam veteran come forward, and that was Tony, and he was in Borneo before he was in Vietnam. And he was tattooed on his arm by Iban, or Dayak, Indigenous people of Borneo. They said, so he'd been working with them, they'd been like guides through the jungle, and they said, you're a warrior, and a warrior should have a tattoo, and sure enough, all their warriors have tattoos. So he said, okay, I'll give it.
That's the only tattoo he's got on his body.
The only tattoo he's got. And it's a really beautiful, traditional, Indigenous design. And he called it cockroaches kissing, but I think it looks a bit like a butterfly.
Or a moth.
Or a moth, yeah, but it's really beautiful. There was something else I was going to say there, but I can't remember. Anyway, definitely tattoos have changed in the century that we have records of, and I think, people they're less impulsive. We're seeing a lot of very thoughtfully, very carefully considered design tattoos.
Because they're mantras. A lot of the ones that have happened post-service are self-affirming mantras that people put on their body. So they put a lot of thought into it. They put it in a visual area so they can see it and reaffirm those things that are important to them.
Yeah, a daily reminder to breathe, to relax, or...
Yeah, to have courage and strength. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So we've spoken today about one of the exhibition themes as healing, but the process of getting tattooed itself can be quite painful, and it can require repeat visits to a tattoo parlour depending on the kind of tattoo that you're getting. So can you talk to us a bit about how much is the act of getting a tattoo part of the process for people versus the end result of having a tattoo? And, is it, are they joined and you just can't separate them, or is that process actually a real feature for people in choosing to get a tattoo?
Great question. I saw a bit of both through the interviews. Some people talked about being here to endure the pain of a tattoo, whereas there are people that aren't. That the pain was cathartic, it was part of a process. And others, it was more about the aesthetic appeal of the final product. But there was a consistent theme through a lot of the interviews that the process of getting the tattoo, that pain, was almost a a feeling they looked forward to or that they wanted. It was a feeling that they needed as part of the process.
Definitely. So Paul, who I mentioned earlier, he said that, and a few people said the pain. You know you're alive because you feel some pain. Adam went one step further there and said, I'm here to feel the pain, and I know people who aren't. And he was talking about, so he had tribute tattoos to lost friends, and it's almost a way, it's almost like he doesn't want to complain about experiencing the pain of a tattoo because at least he is alive to be able to feel the pain, whereas there are other people who are not alive. And then there was also, I think for a few people, there was a bit of an undercurrent of, I welcome the pain. It's a kind of it's almost like there's a sort of a survival guilt, and there's a bit of, it's like a sort of a self-punishing thing. But at the same time, everybody going into this knows that even if it's a big tattoo and a big expensive tattoo that will take hours and hours and a big commitment, it'll be over. You're not going to be in pain forever.
Unless you're Adam.
Yes.
That's 40 hours on the front, 50 on the back, 25 on legs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Big commitment. And some people really love their tattoos, and they don't care about the pain. It's worth it. It's worth it to them. And there are a couple of people who've gone on to compete in tattoo shows as well, so they get a bit of, I guess, more affirmation from doing that as well. Was there another part of that question that we haven't? I think so.
So we had Catherine post a question for the group, which was to ask whether or not this exhibition is online. And of course, we've discussed that a little bit, but you can find it at awm.gov.au/inc. So please check it out and let us know what you think. So thank you for all the questions today. That brings our Museum at Home webinar about Ink in the Lines to a close. We hope that you enjoyed the presentation. I definitely did. If you don't already follow us on social media, please search for the Australian War Memorial on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube to see more of our content. And of course, please share your tattoo photos there using the hashtag Ink in the Lines. Thanks again and goodbye for now.